right. Welcome back, everyone. I guess I could say welcome to the, first proper episode of what's now being referred to as Kanan's Cadence, my brand new podcast show. First episode went up earlier this week as of time of the recording. Today is October 2nd, Thursday, and I put up the first episode on Monday. And so far, first off, that's where I wanted to start. I thank everyone so much for the positive feedback that I've gotten on that first episode, or even if you didn't listen to the episode, just everyone who gave me words of encouragement and support for just the idea of doing this sort of thing now. That really did kind of take me by surprise. Heard from a couple of people that I haven't spoken to in a handful of years at this point, and just genuinely like thank you guys so much for the support. And again, if you took a listen, thank you for listening. If you stopped in for just 2 seconds, doesn't matter. Like even just like a little bit of support, like that means the world to me. Like it really does. So the thing is, I keep being told by my friends, people ask, so I will deliver, I guess. So here we are. And again, like I said, first episode was kind of just untitled podcast show, the title that was connected to it and to my posts on Instagram and YouTube. Like that title actually came after that recording. So as of this particular episode, this is the first time that I'm actually going ahead and using that title in full. So from this point onward, show is officially referred to as Kanan's Cadence. So we're gonna keep it rolling. So if you're dropping in for this one for the first time, basically the idea that I'm getting at with this new show of mine is that I just like talking about stuff. I have things that I'm passionate about, things that interest me, things that have just been on my mind, or just whatever the happenings are in my day to day life, just as it is. And I just want to be able to sit down, just talk about that for a little bit. And if anyone wants to just stop in, listen to what I have to say for even just a little bit, that's kind of the whole idea right there. So, last time I wound up speaking for a little bit about my early days with music, from elementary school through to the end of high school. I have more stuff that I can go into with that, like from I want to say like early college and beyond, to the present day. But I actually wanted to shift gears a little bit because music, um, that's only one of my passions. Is the thing that's what I studied in college, of course. That's what I do right now for work. But that's really only one of my passions. If anyone knows me well, there is a certain hobby that I have that kind of dominates a lot of my life and has since I was a kid. And that right there is just my video game hobby. Whether it's collecting, playing, researching, just listening to others talk about video games, watching others play video games and stuff like that. That has been a major part of my life. I want to say just about as major as the music stuff, which as I put that into words, it's kind of crazy to think of it like that, but it's really just been the truth for as long as I can remember, just about. Like, I've been doing something that has to do with video games or video game characters or whatever it is. And, like, that continues to, again, even just today. Again, like I said, October 2nd, time of this recording, I literally just went and bought Ghost of Yote for PS5 that just came out today. And already sunk a couple hours into that game, shaping up to be a really great game so far. And so, given the fact that even at the time of this recording, like I'm still delving a little too hard into this very expensive hobby of mine at this point in time, I may as well do kind of like I did with the last episode, where I just kind of take it all the way back and talk about for a little bit just what I remember of my upbringing when it comes to the world of video games and stuff. Because again, like I said, with music, it's a big part of my life. Anyone who knows me knows that much. So yeah, so let's flash all the way back. So I want to say we're gonna go back to let's say we're going back to 2001, A Space Odyssey. That's not true. We're not doing that, but we are going back to 2001, where me at 3 years old, my earliest memories that I have with video games in general was of my dad, because my dad, he he had a PlayStation 1. That was like the console in our house from when I was a kid. Like that was the earliest thing that I remembered. And on his PlayStation, he had a handful of games, like not a crazy extensive library, but he was a father of three at that point. But he still made time, as most dads do, I'm sure, to like just have time to himself, and that's what he was doing with that time. When he had anything for free was just playing the PS1. And some of the games that he had on the system, like there was he had some sports games, like he's a big sports guy, so he had it was Cyber Tiger, a Tiger Woods golfing game. He had like a couple of NBA games, and I think maybe there was an NHL game as well that he had on the PlayStation 1. I've never been a big sports person, so like those games never gripped me in any way. Excuse me. I never gravitated towards them personally, but he had some other things too. He was also into like, and even nowadays is still into like army shooters and stuff. So he had like SOCOM on the on that original system. He had Tenchu, Stealth Assassins. I think there were two of those. So a couple of games that I wasn't able to watch at just 3 years old. But then there was one that he had that ended up, from what I can remember, being the first video game that I ever played. Of all things, it was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets on the PlayStation 1. That is a horrible game. It was not a good game at all, but that was the first game that I ever played. Um, and my earliest memory with it, because I've never been like crazy Harry Potter person, like even from when I was a kid. Like I never cared about the series too much. But I remember watching him play that, and there was a section in the beginning of the game where you're Harry, obviously, and I think you're in the attic, and Dobby the house elf is on the other side of the room, and he is just throwing stuff. He's throwing everything across the room at Harry, just making the biggest mess. Eventually I did go and watch the movie, and I know what it's in reference to now, but that was what I remembered when I was a kid. And there's probably some sort of lapse in my memory, or just like my memory from being a kid kind of freaked out by this thing, like twisting what it actually ended up being. But from what I remember, Dobby would make some kind of strange noises as he was throwing these things. So I remember my dad, he had the game on. I was watching him play it. He handed the controller to me, first time I ever held a controller, and he was kind of just like, "All right, have at it." And there I am, one side of the room, just getting pelted by all these items that are being thrown at me, and I don't know what to do. So all that I remember doing is freaking out, and I reach for the reset button on the system, and I just hit it, and I toss the controller, and I kind of just start to cry or whatever. And I feel so bad in hindsight doing that, because I'm just like, yeah, he probably didn't have a chance to save. But then I feel less bad when I realize, A, probably not the greatest game. I don't think that he's going to finish this one. And B, it wasn't that far into the game one way or another. That's probably the first like 20 minutes or so, if that. So it wasn't like any progress was lost, but that was my first experience. And honestly, going off of something like that, I'm now kind of wondering how I even continue to play at this point. But I wasn't going to let that bad initial experience turn me off, because there were two other games that he had on this system that kind of just solidified this long winding path that I was going to be on for the honestly just probably the rest of my life at this point. And those two games, one of them was Crash Bandicoot 2. Cortex Strikes Back, I believe, is the subtitle on that one. And then the other one, is the big one for me, was Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. And I didn't know, of course, when I was that young, I didn't know anything of Crash Bandicoot or Spyro the Dragon. I just saw these two characters, nice bright colors and all that type of stuff, and I was just like, hey, those guys look fun. I want to see what those games are like. And it was kind of like a love at first play, I want to say, when it came to both of those. But more specifically, Spyro 2. So, like, I always loved Crash 2. Like, just so much nostalgia connected to that game. When you try to 100% the game, it is hard as heck, but I will just leave that for another time. Either way, like I had a lot of fun playing Crash, but it was Spyro. That was the one. That was the one that stuck with me. Um, my two older siblings can probably attest. Like we've played that game. I can't. I don't know that I can even count that high. Like, we played the game, that one in particular, the second one of the series. We played that one so many times in our lives, in so many different versions. We had multiple copies of the first game for various reasons. I remember my first dog actually, she when she was teething, she broke one of those discs because she found it and she just started chewing on it, and then the disc wouldn't play after that, so we had to get it replaced, and then we had to get it replaced again. And I think we had to get it replaced again just over the years, but like we always would end up getting the game back because it was just that much fun, and it was that important to each of us. At the very least, I don't want to speak for them, but like it was that important to me, and I figure probably the same thing for those two. So that guy, and I can do like a whole one of these episodes just talking about Spyro the Dragon at some other time. So that's why I'm not going to spend too much detail here. But at the same time, that's what got me to want to keep going with games. So now, if we jump forward, if this was 2001, jump forward, I want to say 3 more years. So now I'm 6 years old. My birthday rolls around. I believe maybe the timeline's wrong. I think it was 2004. I got a Game Boy Advance for the first time, Game Boy Advance SP, the last model of the Game Boy, and my first game that I had on that. I have no idea if anyone will know this reference, but this game was called Duel Masters, um, a Japanese card series that apparently did precede ones like Yu-Gi-Oh and such. I was just doing research into this a few weeks ago. I think that I ended up finding out that Duel Masters was like a manga slash anime adaptation of Magic the Gathering or something like that, or at least it was connected to it. That I never knew. I've never played Magic the Gathering or anything like that. When I was a kid, I played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh, and I had Pokemon cards. I never played the game, but I had those types of cards, never Magic. So I didn't know what Duel Masters was, except for the fact that I watched the anime based on it when I was getting ready for school when I was a kid. So that was the first game I had. That game is long gone at this point, but then there was also like Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, which I that introduced me to the world of Kirby, and I love that guy, that pink puff of doom, that guy. But later in that year, and again, this is where the details might be a little hazy on the actual year. I believe 2004 was the same year that Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green were released for the Game Boy Advance. And I was already familiar with Pokemon. My brother had Pokemon Sapphire, one of the first two Generation 3 Pokemon games. And one of my cousins, he had Pokemon Ruby, which was the counterpart to Sapphire. So I was already familiar with watching my brother and my cousin play those games, and I was like, okay, this looks like fun. I would love to have one of these games myself, but I don't want to get the same one that either of them has because that wouldn't be original. It's again, like I said last week, that's the same type of mentality that I had that led me to wanting to play the tenor saxophone. I wanted to be unique when I was a kid, but I wanted to still follow in the footsteps of others who did these things before me. So, me, when it came to being unique, I was like, okay, well, there's a new one coming out, Pokemon Fire Red. I like Charizard on the cover, so that's the one I'm going to go with. I didn't know it was a remake of the first Pokemon games at that time. I just knew that was the newest one being released. So I was like, okay, this is the one that I want to play. And I remember I got it for Christmas that year, and again, another type of love at first play thing. So if I have Spyro 2 as like my first like 3D platformer that I fell in love with and like one of the main ones that I will gravitate to nowadays, Pokemon Fire Red, not just in the Pokemon series, but then also in terms of like RPGs and stuff. For me, that game is almost quintessential. Just given how many times I've played it, how many hours I've sunk in to like every single playthrough and like all the Pokemon that I raised and like me remembering who I used, when I used them, and like training the hours and hours and hours, like days and weeks of like grinding in these games to get almost every single Pokemon that I wanted to up to the max level 100. So that carried on for years. And of course, again, like that's what sparked my interest in Pokemon from a young age. That game also, it really did help me in a lot of ways because there's a lot like there's almost nothing but text in a Pokemon game. And even to the present day, like they don't have full voice acting in these games. Like they barely have any. They definitely didn't have any back then. So me at maybe 6, almost 7 years old, I was learning how to read and write and all that type of stuff at that point. Like I didn't know a lot about the English language, and here I am playing an RPG that's nothing but text. So I needed to really just hone my reading abilities through that. And then that would carry over into like stuff that I would do in school and stuff where I would see certain words and I'm like, oh, I remember that word from Pokemon. Oh, I see it here. Oh, it's being used to refer to this thing, so it means it has to mean this thing, and so on and so on. So Pokemon, like, it really did contribute in that way for me when it comes to just like even like formative stuff, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, like that was something there. And it didn't stop there because now again, like that was my first RPG just in general, I want to say, role playing game. And I wouldn't delve too much into like the like full on like turn-based RPG type stuff outside of Pokemon until I was a lot older. I know that Final Fantasy um predates me by more than a decade and stuff like that, but I didn't really get into Final Fantasy or know of it, honestly. I didn't know of Final Fantasy until I want to say about 2008, and that's what I'm getting to next. But I didn't actually play it and play it through to like sit down and beat the games until maybe just a handful of years ago. Like it's I've been on a big Final Fantasy kick through the 2020s, that much I know, but that took a long time. However, again, as I just said, I first heard of Final Fantasy in 2008, and the reason it wasn't because of any games that were coming out around that time. Definitely not. It was because of what would kind of complete this trifecta in my mind of like three games that I associate with my childhood. When I turned 10, I was brought to GameStop and I had a little bit of birthday money that I was able to use that day, and there were two games that I ended up picking up that day. The first one, which that game is long gone by this point, it was Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles on the PlayStation 2. I remember that game not being a whole lot of fun, but like in the late 2000s, me and my siblings, at the very least for a couple of years in the late 2000s, we were big into Naruto and just other animes on Toonami. That's another thing that I can talk about another time, but Uzumaki Chronicles, I saw it on the shelf. I was like, oh my god, a Naruto video game? I gotta play this. And then I played it, and then I sold it like a year later because it wasn't good. But the other game that I got that year was Kingdom Hearts 2. And again, like people who know that Kingdom Hearts is a series that I have a lot of words about. Like a lot of words about. For better or for worse. Again, like me, I love the series, but I also recognize all the series' faults. And like I'm one who could probably just do like an essay, like a dissertation type paper on like everything that works and doesn't work with Kingdom Hearts and what I would want to do to like tweak it to like fit it to be exactly what I would want it to be. And that's not to criticize like fully criticize the stuff that the series has done, but that's really just showing like the testament of like how much the series means to me. And it all started in 2008 when I first played Kingdom Hearts 2. So the reason that I got Kingdom Hearts 2, not just because it was the newer one, it was because I didn't understand Roman numerals when I was a kid, and I didn't see or understand that the two I's in the logo meant the number two. So I assumed, because I had just had maybe months prior or a year prior, I had spoken to my brother about the Kingdom Hearts series. I didn't remember its name really, but we had spoken about it. And so when I saw the game's case at that GameStop, I was like, oh, that's got to be the first one in the series. And I see like some Disney characters that are recognizable. I see Mickey, Donald, Goofy, and then I see these other characters that look really cool. So I was like, yeah, definitely, I'm gonna buy that one. So then I brought it home. I played Naruto first, then I put that aside, then I tried out Kingdom Hearts 2. And Lord, I was confused. Trying to start anywhere from the very, very beginning in Kingdom Hearts is brutal. Sometimes trying to start from the beginning in Kingdom Hearts is brutal, if I'm talking strictly story wise right here. But I'm starting from the second mainline game, technically the third game to be released with the series, and I had zero idea of what the series was about. Um, I didn't get it, but I didn't care because once I started like just digging in and playing the game, I couldn't put it down. Kingdom Hearts 2 was the first experience that I had with an action RPG that I could like really, really get into and stuff. And I loved the satisfaction of like defeating enough enemies. The game has two main enemy factions called Heartless and Nobodies. Defeating a bunch of those guys, and then just having Sora, the main character's level, go up, and then seeing the abilities that I get, the gratification of seeing my health bar just slowly get longer and longer the further I go into the game and the more levels that I gain. The honestly comical level of how useless Donald, Goofy, and all your other allies were in that game because the computer, the CPU just was not optimized and stuff. They just could not help with anything. Donald would heal me, so that was kind of nice, but he needed to be alive to heal me. So that being the case, that always got a good laugh out of me. And then just like again, like the hours and hours and hours that it took for me to like grind in my first save file, which honestly I do still have. I have the original memory card that save file was on, and it was a beginner playthrough. The only time that I've ever played a Kingdom Hearts game on the beginner difficulty, but I wanted to hold on to that as like a relic. The first time that I ever got the I've got to on the max level in the game. That's what I'm trying to say. I still have that like archived, and I love it. I love that I have that there. And that again just sent me on this deep dive. And again, like the whole reason that I brought this game up was because again, I was talking about Final Fantasy and like other RPGs and stuff. Final Fantasy and Disney, like that's where like a crossover between those two. That's how the Kingdom Hearts series was kind of pitched anyway, because you got all these Disney characters, and then you bring in like Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII. You've got Squall from Final Fantasy VIII. You have Aerith and Tifa and Yuffie and Sid. All these characters also from Final Fantasy VII and stuff like that. You have Auron from Final Fantasy X, and then all these other characters and stuff. So that was my introduction to these guys. And when I would see them and the stuff that they would do in the game, it made me wonder. I'm like, okay, well, if they're not from Kingdom Hearts, where are they from? And then that's when I started researching into Final Fantasy. Then again, years later, eventually finally started playing that series. And again, that's another rabbit hole that I won't get into today. So basically, um, again, my trifecta is Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage, Pokemon Fire Red, and Kingdom Hearts 2. That's my, I want to say, my childhood when it comes to video games. So three games that defined just what I would end up wanting out of most games, and like just seeing where they went from there, and like eagerly waiting for like any other installments in those particular series, or like seeing when it's like a return to form for the character and stuff like that. Those three, those are the games that did it. And of course, like um went further and further from that point. Of course, like there are other favorites that I've amassed over the years. Try to keep this brief. I'm not going to try to keep this going too much longer. But um, yeah, if I had to like name a couple off the top of my head, of course, like got into like Mario and Zelda. I have favorites from those series. One of my favorite games of all time at this point now is The Last of Us. I could talk at length about that game. Um, Marvel's Spider-Man, the that series that also Insomniac Games, the devs for Spyro, like they are the ones who put out the recent Marvel Spider-Man series, and they're in development of Marvel Wolverine game that I can't wait for, and just like a million other things. So I'm like, the reason why I want to keep this kind of concise and cap it off kind of soon is because my goodness, there are so many things, like so many genres, so many series that I can go into like in like their own episodes and stuff. And like I really want to do that. So my first venture into that, maybe not next week, maybe the week after that, I don't know, something like that. I want to start off and just talk about Spyro the Dragon. Like the my experiences not just with Spyro 2, which is my favorite one still, but just with my the other games that I played, the good and the bad. I do want to talk a bit about the bad as well. But that's kind of where I want to start with this and just kind of go from there. I have already had some people suggest some things to me that I can talk about, or like topics that I can bring up. So I mean, like if anyone's listening and they have like suggestions, like even if it's like if we're on the subject of video games right now, if you have a game that you want to maybe even ask me, like, hey, have you played this? Can you talk about it? Something like that. Like I'm willing to take those type of suggestions too. But in the meantime, for me, I'm probably just going to like go down the list and like see what it is that I want to talk about. And that's not going to be a weekly thing, is the other thing. Like I want to just bounce around my ideas. I'm going to jot some stuff down, see what I want to talk about and when I want to talk about it. Again, like I said in the beginning, I still have some music stuff with my upbringing that I want to go into, like my college years and all that type of stuff, and just some other interests and hobbies of mine and all that. So that is going to be for another time. And with this, again, I'm going to call it a wrap on this episode now. Once again, like I said at the beginning, thank you so much everyone for the positive responses that I've gotten, the feedback, and then just the like boatloads of support and all that type of stuff. It really does mean the world to me. And I'm just going to keep this thing going. I have kind of come up with a routine for myself at this point. Like I plan to record every Thursday and then upload every Monday and just keep that cycle going. So this is actually a thing that's happening now, and I'm really looking forward to keeping it going at this point. So with that said, and I can say this now, this has been Kanan's Cadence for the second episode, but the first episode properly using that title. So, with all that said, thanks so much for listening, guys. Again, it means a lot, and can't wait to put out the next one. Take care.